Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining today's TM Forum webinar. Today's topic is network analytics, creating better customer experience and new revenues. First of all, I would like to thank our sponsor, MyCom OSI, for making this webinar possible. And I would like to get started right away with our webinar. My name is Rebecca Sendell. I am from TM Forum. I'm the Senior Director of our Customer Centricity Program. I will be one of our speakers today, and our other speaker that we're delighted to have is the President and Chief Technology Officer of MyCom OSI, Munir Ladki. We're thoroughly delighted to have him with us. It's great to have senior executives get to talk to our audiences. And so please take advantage of that throughout the presentation. Really listen to what Munir's got to say. And we will have a Q&A with Munir at the end of the session. So send in your questions throughout the session, please. And also, we will be recording the session. So if you've got colleagues that you want to share this with as well, we will send that out, and you will be able to get to a recorded version as well. So just a little bit more about Munir. He's the President and Chief Technology Officer at MyCom OSI. Munir joined MyCom in 2001 to start and lead the software business. And since then, he's led the company's product strategy, development, and go-to-market. Munir has 18 years of international experience in technical and business leadership roles. And when he does his part of the webinar, we'll get him to tell us a little bit more about what he does at MyCom OSI. So let's jump right in to the presentation. Here's our agenda. I'm going to speak first about some research that TM Forum has done in the area of network analytics. Next, we'll move on to two compelling use cases that MyCom OSI has put together, one on value-based capacity planning and one on QoS-driven NFV orchestration. So both, of course, leveraging the network analytics concepts that we'll be talking about throughout the webinar. And then at the end, I'll just do a quick overview of TM Forum's data analytics best practices, particularly where they point to network analytics. And then, as I said, we will have a Q&A at the end. So send in those questions as you think of them throughout the presentation. So let's jump right in. You know, everybody on this call probably thinks about big data analytics a lot, and that's why you're here. You know, for us in TM Forum, the biggest thing that we really focus on and we really talk about is getting the value out of the data, getting actionable, relevant, and timely information out of data. And that concept applies perfectly to this topic of network analytics that we're going to focus on today. So we'll really be talking about how you get all of this data together and how you get the value out of the data. That will be the key focus. So we did a research report in the last few months around network analytics. TM Forum's got a fantastic research department. If you're not familiar with that, you can go onto our website, which, by the way, is our brand new website. So if you haven't been on there, it might look very different to you when you go there. But go to the research section of our website and take a look at this network analytics report. You can download it if you're a TM Forum member. If you're not a member, get in touch, and we'd love to have you as a member. But in any case, we've got a series of research reports. I'll talk specifically about this one and refer to a couple other ones throughout the presentation. But this quote that I've got up here is a quote that I thought was one of the really summarizing type of statements from this report. Leveraging network and service data to improve customer experience, increase agility, and spark innovation with analytics is an imperative, not an option. I think that sums up the state of the industry and the importance of network analytics really well from that report. So anyway, please everybody go to the website and download that report. So now as we jump in, oh, and also actually one more point on that report, MyCom OSI sponsored that report as well, so I'd like to thank them again for their sponsorship on that report. So let's just jump right into the meat of the report. These are the topics in the report. I'm going to talk about all of them, so I'll start with talking about current market forces. Then I will talk about critical functionalities that are enabled by network analytics. I'll move on to talking about service provider strategies and approaches for network analytics. Then the challenges faced by service providers as they're using real-time and offline data in their analytics programs. And then we've got a practical steps and recommendations that really summarizes the learnings from the research. So let's jump right in. So this first slide, we're looking at market forces here. You see in all those bubbles different market forces that are really driving the way the network is being used. The first is the move to intelligent mobile devices. Consumers are doing more and more of their screen time on their mobile devices. And consumers, several studies have shown that people are checking their devices 50 to 150 times a day. People are pretty addicted to mobile, and they're really driving the usage of the mobile network higher. And as they're getting more mobile, that's allowing content to be shared and consumed in context, which is another driver of using the network more and more. People are sharing content directly from an event, or they're getting location content specific sent directly to them. It's really increasing mobile engagement, the idea of using content in context. In addition, mobile commerce, people are buying more and more things from their mobile devices, more and more as compared to what they would be buying just on their regular home laptop or other non-mobile devices. So more commerce is happening while people are not just sitting in front of a computer. It's while they're mobile. And the other thing that's happening is people are using their mobile devices for research. So while they're out shopping in a brick-and-mortar location, they're looking on their phones. Nearly half of consumers are now using the smartphones to do research while they shop. Again, mobile commerce driving network usage up. And on the enterprise side, enterprises are going digital. Customers want to use digital channels for their B2B transactions, and companies want to do that. It lowers their costs. It creates a seamless and integrated customer experience. It lets them reach new markets. You know, this idea of going digital is really creating competitive advantage for enterprises. So they're moving lots of things to be mobile ready and everything digital. And finally, Internet of Things is booming. Services like asset management, digital health, smart metering, connected everything, cars, homes, etc. They're changing consumer and enterprise products and services. So all these trends will continue to drive huge increases in traffic. Mobile traffic is expected to increase more than 10 times in the in the 5 years between 2013 and 2018. And the bottom line is that high quality communications are a fundamental enabler for all of this. And network analytics are going to be a key driver to that concept of high quality communications. And just one other point that came out in some research that we did, there's a fund manager that was quoted in the Financial Times as saying that he thinks that market shares and revenues of large telcos will stabilize and stock prices will rise now that companies can offer a competitive broadband product. So, you know, as the network is becoming stable, that will enable companies to really drive up the stability of their customer base and their stock price. This shows a direct linkage between quality of service and share price. That's really key, that service providers can really help themselves here by providing a high-quality product to their customers. So lots of things happening in the market that are really driving the importance of the network quality throughout the life cycle of customer engagement. So the graph I've got here actually comes from a separate research report that we did, but it applies so well to this concept of quality that I wanted to share this. If you look at this graph, the number one priority for enterprise customers, that was what the research report was on, is about quality of service. Quality of data services in particular. And if you look further down the list, there's 3 other areas that are very specifically related to the quality and performance of the network. So 4 out of these top 10 items are reflecting the very significant power of having an excellent high-quality network that's providing high-quality services. And just one more quick graph from that research. If you look at the planned investment areas, in the next 2 years, we found that service providers are responding to those priorities from the previous slides, and 3 of the top 6 areas for planned investment are around managing networks and services. So once again, this is a super key topic to our global service providers, the quality of service. And while service quality is extremely key, there are lots of other areas, of course, that also drive success, such as innovative services, pricing, customer experience, billing, all of those things. But what we've really learned through the research and what you'll hear today from Munir is that most of these things, all of these things, have got network and data analytics underlying them, contributing to their success. So you might talk about proper customer support or accurate billing, but having your network analytics is foundational to all of these areas and to driving service quality. So let's look at the real-time analytics concept that came from the report. So when we are looking at real-time analytics and you look at what our respondents say, they talked a lot about the combination of historical data with real-time data. They say the combination of these two kinds of data together is changing the game dramatically. The power of this information and bringing it together to create these faster response times and new types of agility in service providers in terms of making faster decisions is really providing a whole series of new applications and new benefits for them. So if you look at that list on the right-hand side, there's kind of two chunks. There's the pieces that are improving existing type of capabilities using analytics, like being better and faster and more agile at repairing network outages, at addressing constrained capacity, at identifying and tackling network threats, at continuing to improve the customer support and customer engagement lifecycle. Those areas are areas where analytics will make better what you're probably already doing today. The areas at the bottom, predicting network performance, predicting customer behavior, and enabling personalization, are new areas that really wouldn't exist to anywhere near the same extent that they will be able to exist with real-time analytics. So in short, real-time analytics will change the way companies are doing business. This is what the research told us. This is what the interviews with service providers told us. It is really the way they're thinking about the use of network analytics and real-time analytics in particular. So in addition, we talked to our respondents about the impact of real-time analytics and virtual networks. So what came out of the research is that the opportunity is going to be huge for real-time analytics in the area of managing virtual networks. With NFV rolling out now, and it's still quite an immature technology, it's new, there's a lot to learn, et cetera. So management of performance through multiple approaches is going to be critical. And what we found in asking about analytics and virtual networks is that, of course, service quality will be a key driver, but there's a lot of other applications as well that will require significant network analytics. So in particular, I note here the areas that came up in the research, including transition planning from the networks that are in place today to the virtual networks, performance monitoring, definitely needing to understand the way capacity and performance are happening as things are transitioning from the network as it exists to the virtual environment. Agile and intelligent offer management. So there'll be the ability to change services much more quickly in the virtual world when it's all software. So tracking the success of new services, creating new intelligent offers, et cetera, will require analytics. And then this last one is definitely interesting, differentiated services delivered with third-party partners. So, as we get into this more open and digital world, we'll definitely be doing lots more types of services that are across multiple partners in a value chain. But how do you manage that relationship? How do you ensure that services end-to-end, when there's multiple partners in a value chain, are being delivered with high quality? How do you know where faults in the network are? How do you find them before they happen, et cetera? So all of those things will require analytics, and that will certainly be a high-growth area both in the industry and also in terms of demand for real-time analytics as well. Okay, so the next chunk of our research, we asked service providers, give us a list of what you think network analytics will enable in your company, and then tell us what the benefits are. So we've got them listed out here. Service providers talked about using network analytics for much more than just network-facing capabilities. They talked about applying the data for real-time customer support, for personalization of services, for churn management, for risk areas like fraud and security management, and for marketing campaigns. Those are the ones that showed up the most in the conversations. And then if you look at the list of benefits, it was long. There's definitely a lot of advantages to be seen in using real-time and network analytics. So if we just take a quick walk through that, network visibility and improved agility are things that we've been talking about throughout the webinar, but also some really high-level benefits like improving customer experience, lowering operating costs, lowering capital expenditure, reducing risk, new potential for new revenue. I mean, really, these are key business drivers in every business, and it's impacting every piece of the enterprise. So this is just huge. It's really become part of the fabric of the service provider, this concept of using analytics throughout their business, and particularly network analytics and real-time analytics. We also distilled a few differentiators out of those conversations that enable a service provider to really differentiate themselves by using real-time analytics. And so a number of the respondents did mention, like I pointed out earlier, that the power of real-time analytics is even stronger when it's combined with historical data. And you know, in that context, here, a few of the differentiators are listed here. Some of the respondents talked about how network analytics would help in improving relationships with third-party partners and over-the-top traffic. Talked about that a bit on the last slide. Some of them talked about how they could use real-time analytics for creating differentiated services. So basically, serve your highest lifetime value customers better and faster than lower value customers. So really creating the Cadillac experience versus the lower quality or lower focus, I guess, on the lower value customers. So a tiering of how you serve the customers. That's a way to definitely differentiate your services with your high value customers. Personalization, the ability to look at where somebody is or what they're buying or what their interests are from the real-time and historical perspective, and create personalized offers, and also know, where are they in the network, and what services might be useful to them based on where they are. So personalization is definitely a key. And then just the general statement about being able to act more quickly and decisively. So serving customers better, making improvements to performance and quality. Being able to do that quickly and more decisively becomes a differentiator using real-time analytics. So just a couple more points from the research. There's definitely challenges in all of this, right? It all sounds great, and I know everybody thinks, okay, yes, I want to implement some of these things and have the kinds of benefits that you're talking about. But there are definitely challenges out there. I don't think any of these are surprising that came out of the research. I think they're challenges that we've been talking about in the general data analytics area for a long time. But it's definitely, definitely interesting to see the summary that came out of the research. So the first is about scattered data. The quality and reliability and consistency is always a challenge with data because there's so many data sources in a service provider. And correlating that data and synchronizing it, standard issues with bringing lots of data together, definitely came out in the research. The next one I thought was interesting, the availability of applications that produce actionable output. Service providers in the report said that they want solutions, not toolkits. And I think in some areas they're finding that, in other areas maybe they're not finding the level of solutions that they want. So good advice for the vendors out there. Complexity, we talk a lot about volume and velocity in the big data analytics world. The research particularly brought to light the cross-organizational complexity that happens in these types of scenarios where we're combining the real-time and the historical data. Lots of departments involved to make that happen. Also, there was a discussion about the speed/latency investment. So how much money should you spend to reduce latency when you're talking about real-time analytics? How real-time do you need to be, and how much money do you need to spend to get there? I don't think there's a well kind of defined standard for that, and so that's currently a challenge to people who are working on real-time analytics. And then finally, data governance. It's a very complex environment that we've been talking about, so security and privacy and governance of the data and things like that were listed as key challenges. And then, in summary, we've got 6 lessons learned that came out in the research and recommendations. So first of all, begin with an end in mind. Basically, understand where you can get the biggest business value so you know where you're going. Number 2, get the business organization involved early in the process. This will ensure useful results that enable actionable insight. Number 3, might sound obvious, but you want to develop a detailed business case. It'll drive the project. It's also very useful to get funding. And this step will also help lay out the scope of the project, which is important in a big cross-functional project like this. The next one, think big, start small. It's good to start with a large vision, but it's also good to execute some smaller projects for some quick wins. We're finding this in the data analytics area especially. A few successes create momentum and excitement around data analytics and enables that cross-organizational cooperation to snowball, and then you can move on to your bigger projects. The next one, get the solution right, then focus on latency. We just talked about the challenge of latency. So address the business problem first, and then tune for latency as a second step when you're really starting to get some results out of your implementation. And then finally, consider the cultural aspects. Cross-functional projects like analytics can be difficult organizationally and culturally, and our respondents noted that collaboration needs to be rewarded in these scenarios. So I think those are 6 pretty good points to leave you with. And on that note, I have concluded what we developed in that research report. And I would like to hand over to and introduce again Munir Ladki from MyCom OSI. So Munir, before you start, could you please just tell us a little bit more about your role at MyCom OSI, and maybe also share with us what you see as the biggest challenge that service providers are facing today, and then jump into your talk.
Thank you, Rebecca. So about my role at MyCom OSI, well, I head our overall product organization, including the strategy, the product management, the R&D, the integration, and the solutions, and our 4 innovation labs in Folsom, California, in Paris, Gurgaon in India, and Taipei. So it's a very exciting job, especially in our industry where things are moving so fast, where innovation is also and technologies are moving so fast. But that's why I have always to keep up with the speed and the innovation speed of some of our younger and brighter talents in the company, which makes my job sometimes a little bit tougher, but also very interesting as well. Coming back to the challenges for the CSPs today, if I have to choose one, because there is not only one challenge, but if I have to choose a very important one, I would say it's about their business model, and the evolution they're trying to operate from being mainly connectivity providers, to becoming providers of digital experiences across various industries, not only to consumers, but also across various industry verticals. And that will allow them to generate new revenue streams. But at the same time, they will have to operate this transformation cost effectively because of the pressures that they are facing right now on their profitability. So they have to marry the two, the evolution to the digital experience role, and at the same time the doing this very cost effectively. And big data analytics will play a key enabling role into that transformation, which is why also we are focusing on this topic and why it is so important for for the service providers around the world. First, a couple of words about MyCom OSI. So we are a software vendor specializing in service assurance, in automation and orchestration and analytics solutions. We work with many of the tier 1 operators, not only tier 1, but many mobile, fixed, and converged operators around the world, including 8 out of the 10 top mobile CSPs worldwide. The group is headquartered in London. We are about 250 people worldwide. And MyCom OSI, by the way, is a new brand created in October 2014, following the acquisition of OSI by MyCom. Quickly, because we are going to talk about the analytics, I just want to show our approach to analytics, because the big data is a very, very big topic, and you can approach it from different angles. You have some companies focusing on the storage and the technology, the underlying technology. Some companies, focusing on the generic processing, large volume data processing and analytics, etc. From our side, we came to it essentially from the telecom side and from the assurance side, because MyCom OSI has traditionally been a provider of service assurance. i.e., we are network telecom experts. We manage network performance, quality of service, network events, and so on. Here, what we have done, and we see this on these blue boxes here, and then we've enriched, we've added these analytics, the big data analytics dimension to this to the service assurance, and the marriage of the two, bringing the two together, allows us to come up with a new generation of use cases that I will present and talk about in this presentation. So here, it's not only about the analytics taken as a separate topic, but it's also how you can leverage the analytics with the telecom know-how, with service assurance, to come up with some very, very disruptive and innovative solutions. So this is exactly the essence of it, and your ability to link together. By doing so, the ability to link network, service, and customer dimensions to achieve the purpose. So if I had to just talk briefly about first the notion, the concept of network analytics and how we define essentially network analytics. Basically, traditionally, big data has been addressed on the commercial side, on the BSS, what you call the BSS domain. So data is collected essentially from billing records, and it's data around the customers' profiles, consumptions, handsets, tariffications, etc. It's all on the business consumer side, and then somehow also the CRM. And it was, and the use cases that are most, I would say, commonly used are around segmentation, offer optimization, also, some predictive analytics as well around the churn prediction, etc. But I would say that taken in the BSS domain alone, the benefits of the big data analytics could be somehow limited. On the one hand, because unlike the OTT, the over-top providers, the internet content providers, the telecom industry is very regulated. So operators cannot really do or manipulate the data as they wish. Data has to be anonymized. There are barriers for selling the data to third parties. There are barriers to exporting the data and selling it, and storing it outside certain domains, etc. So I would say that some of the over-the-top providers like Google or others have much more freedom in using this type of just personal or consumer-related big data, and maybe can derive more commercial benefits out of it, more than what traditional telecom service providers can do. And that is, and also because, we all see it when we use an app, etc. We click on, we accept all the terms and conditions for that app and for the usage of the data, we accept it much more easily than what we would do with the telecom service providers. However, having said that, the telecom service providers have more benefit from that they can derive by correlating and bringing together the network, all the network information they have and the network usage and the way their customers are using the network and are moving around the network together with the other part of the big data from the commercial and then the BSS domain. And bringing these two together can enable a new set of use cases that could dramatically improve the customer experience, allow to differentiate on that side, allow to drastically improve the profitability of the business and reducing the capex. And at the same time, in the future, and as the regulatory environment will allow it, they will be able to use this also to monetize the quality of service. And this is what Rebecca was talking about in terms of offering the Cadillac experience. Although this is somehow limited by net neutrality, etc., but we saw that in Europe, for example, the European Council is going to, is moving in another direction, which will open also new possibilities and revenue streams enabled by network analytics. However, looking at some of the challenges, if we to implement these network analytics use cases, operators have to overcome certain challenges. First, data is in silos, and this is, again, Rebecca mentioned that. But it's not only the data stored in silos, it's this organization that is fragmented. So usually you have sales, marketing, CRM, etc. on one side, then you have the network operations and technical part of the organization on the other side. So not only the data is fragmented in silos, but also the processes, the tools, the workflows, the people, etc. are all separate. I mean, how many times is planning talking to IT in a standard operators? I mean, this doesn't happen really. So that's the number one challenge to overcome. The other challenge to overcome is really when it comes to doing to the structured analytics. It's all about turning the big data into actionable insight. And to do so, there should be a combination of telecom knowledge and telecom data modeling and telecom business process modeling that has to come into play and be combined together with the big data analytics. And this is something very difficult to achieve because these are two separate worlds, two separate set of data models, information models, structure of data, reference points, schemas, etc. So there is a lot of technical challenges on the software itself to bring these two sets of data together and align them, especially if you want to do it in real time. It is all the more complex. And on that side, for example, this is why you have some initiatives such as the TM Forum that is building these analytics libraries or use cases that allows to somehow bridge the gap that we're talking about here. And finally, the last challenge is the transformation of the organization itself, because all the departments in an operator are not used to be driven by data, by the big data. This is not how they work. So there is also here a transformation that should come into place in order to transform traditional business processes into business policies that are automated and driven by and fed by big data. And here, what we have done at MyCom OSI is that we have been able to overcome some of these challenges, working with some partner operators, some of our key customers who were willing to act as pioneers and advance in this transformation, but well, we're worked hand in hand. So this is not only something that is developed in the lab in isolation from the customer. It is exactly done in very, very tight collaboration with some of our customers to drive that innovation and come up with these use cases. And here I will present a couple of them, basically, that are all built on our analytics and service assurance platform. And these two use cases are one around value-based capacity planning, and I'll have the occasion to talk about it in a little bit more details. And the second one is around the QoS-driven orchestration of NFV networks. And I'll introduce the topic a little bit later. But the key fundamental enabler behind these two use cases that I'll present here is the ability to bring together the BSS domain, to bridge the gap between the BSS, the commercial big data, and the network, unify them and make them speak the same language, and then derive from there some actionable insight. So let's move to the first use case, which is the value-based capacity planning. First, what is the traditional approach or current approach for network capacity planning? Basically, when operators want to plan the new capacity to add to the network, they start by looking at historical network resource data. How the network resource has been the consumption of the network, the load, and on the network resources, and then the inventory that was in place. Second, they would look at the traffic mix provided by marketing, which relates, to the subscriber growth, to the types of subscribers, the handsets, the types of services utilized, and so on. However, this traffic mix, which is absolutely fundamental for the accuracy of the planning, has two major drawbacks or two limitations. One, it is static. So usually it is when marketing provides such data, the traffic mix, they don't provide its evolution over time. They just provide a traffic mix that to be taken into consideration in the planning exercise. And the second thing, usually the traffic mix is provided at a macroscopic scale. So it could be at the scale of a region, a city, a country, but it never goes down to the finer granularity, such as a cell site, for example. So the planning will always remain a macroscopic exercise. Like it will never be a surgical, really fine-tuned exercise at a very specific, look down to the site level, etc. And the second thing that is the second very important limitation, that it does not take into consideration the real-time experience requirements for the planning, because and the customer behavior, because customers will behave differently, will use different applications that require different type of resources in terms of latency or bandwidth and so on and so forth. And this is not taken into consideration. So the planning tends to be homogeneous and not tailored to the type of usage that the users are doing at a certain time in a certain location. And the last thing is the process tends to be lengthy, cumbersome, involving heavy manual effort, which means that it can be done only once or twice a year. And second, because they lack all this granularity, what operators tend to do is then to over-provision the network in order not to face a quality of service or quality of experience degradations, which mean that they commit much larger capex spend earlier than required, and they do it in a kind of generic way rather than really targeted way, just to avoid issues. And this is exactly what the analytics-driven capacity planning will remedy. Because what the analytics-driven capacity planning will do is that, first of all, it will access all the consumer behavior and consumer traffic patterns information. So the first thing is it will bring all the data related to the subscribers, their CLV, their tarification patterns, their net promoter score, the handsets that are being used, the tarification plans they're on, and so on and so forth. So they'll bring all this data that are coming from the BSS domain, and then it will map it. It will correlate this to the network resources. It will map all this information to the network resources in order to create profiles and patterns of network resources that are driven or mapped with these kind of more business and consumer considerations. And that correlation here is the combination of will involve first accessing the data from the commercial domain, and then finding the right real-time and non-real-time keys to correlate it and bring it and map it together to the network resources. I'll give you an example. For example, what this means. For example, you have certain handset types, okay, that will have lower signaling load on certain radio technologies, 3G, 4G, certain spectrum domains, etc. So if you know what kind of handsets you have in certain locations, you will be able to better assess what will be the signaling load in that area, and you would be able to better plan the corresponding, for example, signaling load and the resources that you will need to provision. So as a result of this combination of these two types of information will allow to invest in the networks to match exactly the nature of the demand, and then the investment in the network can be much better targeted, can be the right one to match the user experiences, and can also be phased in time because you have this time dimension that is involved. Now, the how it is done. So this involves a few things in terms of the how. First of all, we will the first thing is to discover, to understand exactly what is the data that you need from the big data that you have. Like, what is the subset that is required for this planning exercise? What is relevant? And I gave some examples before. The same thing is done in parallel on the standard network data. So this is related to the load, the usage, the available capacity, the performance, the quality of service, the grade of service, and so on and so forth. The second element, after you access the two types of information, the second aspect is to apply multidimensional processing across two axes. One is on the topology of the network, because you will need to know the topology, and you need to have this cross-domain correlation capability, and to map this data properly. Because here, of course, the exercise does not only apply to one domain, but extends to an end-to-end approach. And the other processing has to be done on the time basis, because you need to understand these profile this information over time, because the planning exercise has to take the time consideration into place. Then on top, you move into I would say the most difficult pieces, and that is the data discovery and the forecasting, because then you need to start bringing the pieces of the data together, and you need to start discovering. So here it's the data scientist approach, to discover, to find the right patterns that correlate and match together the information and to do the profiling, and from the profiling to derive the forecasting. And the forecasting you start from the more traditional linear regressions methods, all the way to the more elaborate machine learning and artificial intelligence methodologies. And this will allow you then to have the right forecast that allow you to understand what type of resources you need, by when, and to match what kind of experiences. And once you have done that, then the last layer on top is the workflow. Okay, once I have this insight, how do I turn it into a network planning and provisioning exercise? What are the steps involved then to then make this a reality and turn it into a network planning exercise? And this, as I mentioned, involves then the transformation of the traditional business process to make it more data-driven one. So these are, I would say, the four requirements, the four layers that needs to stack up, that needs to come together to form the entire solution that can deliver this network, the network analytics capabilities for the specific capacity planning exercise use case. The benefits of this is one, you can have a business-aware planning, and to summarize quickly, you have, and you can see here some of the metrics proposed by the TM Forum, but I would say there are two main benefits to summarize them. One is you have the surgical investment. So you invest really specifically in each of the locations depending on the demand, rather than doing like carpet bombing. So you achieve a better return on investment. You optimize the CapEx allocation, you phase it in time, and on that note, some of the studies by some of the leading analyst firms suggest, and even some of the operators suggest, that you could achieve up to 10% at least of CapEx savings. So when you consider this in the light of like the tens of billions of dollars invested annually on LTE infrastructure, for example, this can give you an idea of the great savings that could be achieved with this. And the second benefit that could be achieved is an improved customer experience, because, as I mentioned, you will be provisioning the right type of resources needed for the usage in a particular place at a particular time. As for example, the resources needed for applications needing like very low latency, or at the contrary, applications that don't need that much low latency, but that require much larger bandwidth, for example. And this will then encourage your subscribers to consume more data, because they will be having a better experience, which in turn, as Rebecca mentioned, will mean better data revenues and even ultimately more valuation of the operators' companies. So it's really a virtuous cycle that would be enabled by this. Moving on to the other use case, and this is around the orchestration of NFV networks. NFV brings a lot of promise for operators. It brings the promise of first massive OPEX reductions and CapEx reductions, because the networks will be moved from dedicated hardware to very complex and great variety of hardware boxes to standard hardware in data centers. Second thing, it will render the operation of the network, the OPEX, much lower, and the operation of the network much more agile and faster, which will enable the launch of applications and services matching real-time experience demands by the users. So it's a great promise and that underpins the desire of the operators to move from being connectivity providers to more digital experience providers, as I mentioned before. But there will be challenges coming with this. The first challenge is around the ability to manage a hybrid network, because for many years, NFV networks will be hybrid, both fixed both physical and virtual. And the second big challenge here is on the orchestration side. You know, the orchestration is this configuration, constant real-time reconfiguration of the network resources, the virtual network resources. Well, you want this to be driven by the customer experience and the quality of service. You wouldn't want this to be driven purely by network resource configuration and at the end come at the expense of the customer experience. And this is, again, what analytics can solve here or can bring, because here on this diagram you see what a QoS-driven orchestration process would look like and how we at MyCom OSI are shaping it, in the sense that everything has always first explaining this loop that you see here. Everything has to start with quality of service and SLAs from the customer domain. You have to start always, everything has to be driven and contribute to an optimal SLA and quality of service. So data is collected, then it has to be analyzed and to understand when there is a degradation or there is a negative trend, to understand or to predict even what is causing this degradation. It can be on different parts of the network, it can be on the handset, on the service, etc. Then once this underlying cause has been understood, there is a policy that needs to be executed. Policy triggers will come into play, and a policy needs to be executed to instruct then the networks or the MANO, the orchestrators, the resource orchestrator, to reconfigure the network in a certain way to solve that problem. And then you will have to close the loop by measuring the effect of that reconfiguration of the network and then feeding back, and then you then execute this loop again and again. Today, the way the industry is organized, everyone is focusing on delivering this red box here, the only the resource-focused orchestrator. While what we are saying here is that this blue loop on top is essential, and this is kind of as a brain, will act as a brain to steer and command the orchestration process to make it driven by and to make it converge towards an optimal quality of service. And the analytics, the real-time and non-real-time analytics, both will play a fundamental role, because on the real-time we will be collecting this real-time analytics information that I referred to before, relating to the usages, the handsets, the types of customers, etc., will be a key input to enable this real-time orchestration objective to feed data into the top of the loop, to understand exactly what are the customer usages, what are their experiences, who are the customers that I want to focus on, and I want to orchestrate the network in order to serve as a top priority. And that will not be possible without that input from that orchestration layer. And here, everything will have to be designed using standard industry kind of APIs, such as the RESTful APIs, that will enable this kind of very sleek and smooth and real-time information exchange. And then you have the non-real-time, because what you want also is this orchestration process to become predictive and not only reactive. And for that, again, it's the non-real-time analytics and the information, such as the ones also that we shared that we spoke about for the planning exercise, that will be injected here to enable these the prediction, the predictive part, and to always again ensure that the orchestration is converging towards a maximized customer experience. That's it. I'll end here. I think I used even a little bit more than my time. Sorry for that, Rebecca, and I hand it over to you. Thank you.
That's okay, Munir. That was fascinating, actually, and great to see how many things we found in our research really come to life in the case studies that you're presenting. So that's great. I am just going to very quickly talk about TM Forum's data analytics best practices. A lot of what Munir talked about we are reflecting now in TM Forum and our best practices. I'm going to show you the data analytics best practices, but before I do that, I just want to say that TM Forum's got a very large active program around NFV. If you go on our website, again, our brand new website, and look under NFV, SDN, Agile, Business, there's lots of different ways you can find it. The program is called Zoom. And for anybody that is looking into this NFV area, I would highly, highly recommend that you take a look at that, because all of those blue boxes that Munir was just showing on his slide are under development in terms of developing best practices and APIs and everything that Munir was talking about as a set of industry standards. Okay, so we also have the data analytics best practices. And in TM Forum, we've got a library that's got a reference model, it's got use cases, it's got something we call building blocks for implementing the use cases, and the business value roadmap, which essentially shows you how to put the pieces together into a solution. That's the core of our data analytics best practices. Again, go on our website, go to the resource library, put analytics in, and all of these resources will pop up for you. I know this is small writing, but we've got 51 data analytics use cases, and because you'll be able to download this slide and download this presentation and rewatch it, I wanted you to have this so that you've got the complete list of use cases in front of you. They're about all kinds of things throughout the entire customer engagement cycle. They're about the network. They're about risk management things. So anyway, just a reference and a resource for you. But what I did do is I pulled out the ones that are really relevant to the conversation we're having today. And you'll see right at the top of the list there we've got a use case on value-based network planning. That's what Munir was talking about when he mentioned some of the metrics and measures around doing value-based network planning. We've got policy-based capacity management that Munir was just talking about in the NFV area. We've got proactive care related to network faults. We've got optimizing network technology utilization. So I think that's about a dozen or 15 of the use cases are directly related to network analytics. So please do go to the website, download everything we've got on data analytics, take a look at those best practices, and give us your feedback, very importantly. Tell us what you're doing with network analytics in your company. So I just am going to, obviously I'm not reading every word on this, I just wanted to show you what we mean by a use case in TM Forum. First, we've got a business case, which we talked about. It's in something called a business canvas template. We talked about that as one of the key things to do in an analytics program is develop your business rationale for what you're doing. So in every one of our 51, we've got the business canvas. Then we've got a definition of the use case. You know, what's the name? Who are the actors? What are the business drivers? What's the story in words as to why this is important? Where does this use case apply in the customer life cycle? So we've got a kind of a significant, lengthy definition. It's great because it creates a way within your company to agree on what you're doing, which is also very important for buy-in across the company. So this gives you a great way to accelerate that conversation in your company, and if you're a supplier, it gives you a great way to have the conversation with your customers about what they need. We've also got two different groups of metrics that we identify in our use cases, high-level business metrics and then detailed customer experience metrics. So you'll see that in each of the use cases. And then finally, you'll see the data sources. What are the required data sources to make this use case happen, and what are the optional data sources? So each one of these 51, and we've got about another 7 or 8 that are going to be published in the next 6 weeks, so that library will keep growing. Every one of them has got all this information, so it's a gold mine. Okay, just a reminder, go to the website, go to the Resource Center, and look for everything that we have got in this area, download it, and really take advantage. On the Q&A, we have got a lot of amazing questions. You guys really took to heart the opportunity to talk to Munir and ask him some hard questions. We are just about at the top of the hour, but why don't we just start maybe with one question to wrap it up. How about this one? Ready, Munir? Real-time network analytics makes sense for mobile networks. We're just where the just-in-time decisions are key, how will it play a role in wireline where capacity demand doesn't vary that frequently?
Yeah, thank you, Rebecca. For sure, in the fixed domain, things tend to be less, dynamic than in mobile networks. So the analytics-driven capacity planning might be a little bit less, critical. Although I would say two things. First, with the usages, moving forward, you will have two things. One, you will have certain types of applications that will be much, much more bandwidth hungry, such as, and will be connected to fixed networks, such as augmented reality types of applications, etc. And you would want to understand where these are happening and what's their frequency and who is using them, etc., to provision the right capacity. And the second thing, in the IoT world in particular, as Internet of Things will arrive, you will have a huge amount of new devices with completely new patterns and behavior profiles that will be connected to the fixed networks, because they will be at home, and most probably they'll be connected to all the information, the bursty information will be sent over fixed networks. And even if today fixed networks seem to be kind of over-provisioned, with the arrival of the Internet of Things and all the devices that will be connected, I think analytics will make sense for fixed network. And finally, the convergence is happening. Most of the operators around the world are converging into quad play type of operator. So many of the pure fixed players today, whether they are cable or whether they are ISPs, I think many of them will ultimately converge with mobile operators, and the typical operator that we will see in the future will be a quad play operator. And in that instance, analytics will make a lot of sense to provision the capacity for these kind of operators.
That's great. Very well articulated answer there. That certainly helped me understand the answer to the question. So thanks for that, Munir. We have a lot of other really good questions, but what we will do is we will create some answers in writing, get them back to the individual people that asked the question, and we can probably post some of the answers with the webinar. I will talk with our webinar folks and see if we can post some of the Q&A with the webinar information and send that out in an email to you folks, because we definitely have lots of engagement here. It's obviously a hot topic for people. Also, on the first slide is Munir's email address and my email address. We are both happy to be contacted by anybody who's interested in this area. Please reach out. If you want to get involved in TM Forum in the data analytics area or in any of our future research, we'd love to have you involved. And I'm sure that MyCom OSI would love to hear from you for any additional questions that you've got as well. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Lots of people stayed on even though we're past the top of the hour, so I really appreciate that. Munir, fabulous presentation, a lot to think about, I think, for everybody on the call. And thanks again to MyCom OSI for sponsoring our research and the webinar. Have a great day, evening, night, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you to all the attendees. Thank you very much.